Hey there, it's Emmi Fortin, breakup and relationship coach, and welcome to Candid, where I talk to everyday people about their past relationship stories, how they moved forward, and we're here to give you some great tips and advice. How getting clarity around your relationships will really catapult you into forward movement in your life. So, my goal here with this is to help you feel connected, supported, and identify with people's stories so that you feel like you can really take some action to change your life and move forward. Okay, so the topic of today is staying in a relationship for much longer than you should because you've lost respect for yourself. Another way to say that is maybe you have lost your self-worth, or maybe you're not aware of your self-worth. And so I usually tell the guests and listeners what I did wrong so you don't have to is, and in my case, it is the same thing. It's staying in a relationship that I knew I should have left earlier, and really dragging it out because I had lost sight of my own self-worth, my purpose, what I wanted. And so my guest two today is also going to share his story about how he really felt stuck in a relationship due to finances, but also because he had lost his own self-respect and had to really do a lot of personal growth after the relationship to get him where he is today. But stay around to the end because it's got a great ending. Two has a ton of really valuable advice for you, and I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. I'll give you some strategies at the end of the video as well if you feel like you might be in a similar situation. Enjoy. Hi, welcome to Candid. And as you know, today I have my guest two here with me. Hi, two. Thanks so much for coming today.
Emmi, thank you for having me, and thank you for the time.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. So you are going to share with us today what you did wrong so we don't have to, or in other words, what is the most important thing you learned from a past relationship that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I like how you rephrase that towards the end there, because when you ask, what did I do wrong? I'm thinking of all the list of things that I've done wrong, right? And it's like, oh, which one do I pick from, right? But as far as like in a relationship, what I realized where I grew the most, or the potential of growing the most, was really learning how to respect and appreciate myself. You know, I know a lot of people out there might have gone through something similar, but when you're in a relationship and things don't go well, you're very wrapped up, and it's very hard to move on. And sometimes those are the ground floor. Those are rock bottoms that we face, and sometimes we don't see how we can break through those challenges. And that's where we take ourselves mentally, emotionally. And for me, looking back now, I was able to at least grow from it and realize that if had I respected myself a little bit more, or appreciated myself a little bit more, I think I would have made better decisions for both of us, my previous relationships and myself.
Yeah, that's an awesome answer, because I think a lot of people, including myself in the past, get this tunnel vision when they're in a relationship that maybe is not healthy, or they don't want to be in anymore, or it's not serving both partners. You feel very stuck and you're like, how am I going to get myself out of this? Would you mind giving us a little bit of a backstory about your relationship, or your story, your situation? Why were you feeling like you weren't valuing yourself in that relationship?
So back about like 10 years or so, probably a little bit longer than that. I was in the military, and I was stationed down in Florida. Great spot to be. I had the sun, I had margaritas, I had sand in my toes all the time, right, when I'm not on duty. And I also got married. And so one of the things that happen is, sometimes we're in uniform, we feel great, we're probably at the most fit, greatest health of our life, after getting out of boot camp and everything like that. But unfortunately, for me, and again, this is where I found out that, having that respect, and sometimes that respect for yourself is such a thin line, such a gray area, because you're in the mindset of having to make both people happy, especially your partner, right? So it's more them than it is you. And what happened was, at the time, my wife wasn't really doing anything. She wasn't working. She wasn't doing further education, and she was just kind of home all the time, right? And I was working. When I was working, it was usually the graveyard shift. I would wake up. I would get out of work. We would go to the beach for a few hours, and then when all the vacationers came out, we would come back, and that's when I would sleep, middle part of the day. And I didn't realize that I was actually creating a bad environment for her, right? I was giving her all the opportunities to cheat, and that's what ended up happening. Was, she ended up finding someone else, and part of that was because I actually enabled or created that environment for her, right? I didn't She didn't have to work, she didn't have to go to school, and life was comfortable, and we didn't think about it. And even though I found out, that she was cheating, we still ended up staying separated, but still married, right? For, I don't know, probably for another year and a half or so after that. And a part of me, I felt guilty in the sense where I helped create that environment for her. She wasn't challenged. She didn't have activities or hobbies to do. So of course she's going to be bored when I'm working at nighttime, and then I'm sleeping throughout most of her day, right? So it created the opportunities to look around. And I can, a lot of people will look, well, too, you're kind of blaming yourself. Cheaters will cheat anyways, but we have to really look at what roles we played in those situations,
Yeah.
And
no, I appreciate you saying that. And you are taking a lot of responsibility for it, but I think it's because maybe it was so long ago that you can look back and say, well, you know what? Both people are playing a part here. Of course, it probably wasn't the right thing for her to do, to go behind her back in a relationship, but you are taking ownership of your piece. So what a lot of times when I coach with my clients, we talk about, trying to take yourself out of that victim role. And even if the other person's behavior isn't ideal or is just downright not good, we're not saying that didn't happen and that person doesn't need to take responsibility for it, but we also need to take responsibility for the role that we played in that situation and how it got us to where we were. So yes. I can hear you saying that for sure. And you and I were chatting a little bit before, and you had mentioned how you stayed longer than you probably would have or should have, because you felt bad that if you left her, you'd be literally leaving her with nothing, because she didn't have a job and she didn't really have anything. So what role did that play when you finally did break off or whoever broke it off? How did you grow personally from that? And did it lead you into like any other specific direction in your life as far as where you wanted to grow, what you wanted to do?
And I think that's a great question. So when we look back at that, or when I look back at that relationship, we talk about how much longer I stayed in that relationship than I really needed to. And for me, it would have been nice had we were able to just sign the divorce papers and gone our separate ways. It didn't actually work that way. I separated from the military. We came back here, and she really had nowhere to stay at that point. So we ended up being roommates. So it created this awkward environment where we weren't together. We were kind of together, like we were in the same living space, right? Trying to coexist. And as adults, when you already have a pre-existing sexual relationship, it's hard to just be roommates, right? Especially when at one point we were married. So it created a very awkward environment where we weren't together. There was still emotions attached. It wasn't one of those things where it was like, a stringless emotional relationship. It was just really weird. And it took a while before she finally decided to sign the paperwork and get the divorce official. And for me, that's when I realized that, there's no other question on lack of respect for yourself, right? You're keeping yourself in a situation where you're unhappy and kind of like a prisoner in your own home, because we couldn't maturely go our own separate ways, And what that ends up doing is that you lose time of your life. You lose a part of yourself where you can't go out there and rebuild and strengthen yourself. And move forward, because there's always this lingering relationship that's still there, right? So I was able to really learn and look back where I am today and where I was during that time. Respecting yourself is so important because it gives you the ability to break down and realize what's happened to you in order for you to break through. You know, a lot of times people want to find that breakthrough in their life and move past a relationship, but they haven't allowed themselves to emotionally break down and accept, you know what, there is nothing left. The only way I have is up now. I am rock bottom at this moment. What am I doing to myself? And we mentally drag ourselves through what we would probably say is what we deserve, karma, right? I've done that person wrong. I should punish myself for a period of time. And it's not beneficial for really anyone, right? The
Right.
sooner I can let it go, she can find her own happiness, but I can find myself in the process to
Right.
rebuild.
Yeah, and I empathize with that because I feel like I was in the same situation. Well, not the same, but similar in the sense that I used to call it purgatory. I was in
Yes.
relationship purgatory, and it wasn't just me. It was the two of us just kept on keeping ourselves stuck because we weren't able to leave in that time frame, right? And so, you know, what could be 1 year turns into 2, which turns into
Yes.
4,
Yes.
and then finally 6, and it's like, wow, you know. And so I think that you are hitting the nail right on the head when you say sometimes you need rock bottom to really elicit the change that
Yes.
is necessary. And it's kind of the motivating factor for you to be like, okay, I can't do this anymore, so I'm going to need to make some changes.
Yes.
Um, you know, a lot of people can make changes on their own, but sometimes I think that we might need those drastic events or situations. And so, what kind of, when you said that you were starting to find more respect for yourself, what kinds of things did you notice started to grow as far as you respecting yourself or in your personal growth journey?
You know, part of that respect is, and you mentioned it earlier, is realizing that I've made my mistakes in that relationship. You know, I can't put the blame completely on the other person, on your partner. And sometimes we tend to do that. Emotions take over and we put all the blame on them. And by doing that, you don't respect yourself because you're not learning on what you could prevent in the future in the next relationship, right? So for me, I realized that if I'm going to get into another relationship, I have to be able to find someone that is going to be able to be interdependent with me, right? Because what I saw in that last relationship was a very dependent person on me. And it was nice in the beginning because we get this false sense of belonging. We get this false sense of love and lust and admiration and desire, right? This person really wants to be with me all the time. And we don't realize that that's very dangerous and toxic at the same time, that someone cannot operate without you being physically there all the time, right? So I knew that I did not want to be in another dependent relationship. But then I also know that I don't want to be with someone that is extremely independent either. Someone who doesn't care if I exist. So, you know what I mean? Because what's the point of a relationship at that point when, oh, yeah, I'm out of here. Where you going? No, it doesn't matter. It's not, you know, it's like, okay. So there's no real relationship there either. And it made me realize that, you know, if I'm going to have an interdependent relationship, I have to improve myself so that I can be also emotionally available and not either dependent or independent, too independent, right? Because for me, you know, some people might not believe in horoscopes, but I'm a Gemini. I'm very free flowing and I can be on my own, and you know what I mean? But to some degree, that's not very attractive all the time. Right. So I had to learn how to become an interdependent person. And it actually led me to my passion in learning about how money works and finance. Because a lot of times, I don't know if you've seen it out there, but a lot of times people stay stuck because they're financially dependent on each other. You know, when you can't make that decision, when you can't say, hey, you know, and there's nothing more attractive than having a partner that is also in the same journey, you know, because when the honeymoon phase all plays itself out, when those magical moments start to kind of go away by the wayside, you have to have a foundation. You have to have a common journey, you know. And I'm glad that my marriage today, we are focused on our financial health. We are focused on our personal health, you know, and really providing an abundant lifestyle for our children. So we create the environment that we really want them to grow up in, right? So we never want them to grow up being dependent financially on somebody else or in a relationship or whatever that may be. And it allows us to take that journey together. And I think for a lot of relationships out there, you have to have something beyond the honeymoon stage, because at some point that fizzles and it fades. And if you don't have a common journey together, it becomes a very painful journey.
I
And I don't know if that makes sense, but to me in
Yes,
my head, it makes sense.
I completely agree. And there's a few things that you said that I wanted to just kind of back up and comment on is first of all, what you're saying is like the whole premise of my coaching program is that you need to be the best version of you
Yes.
in order to be able to move forward in your life, but also to attract the partner that's going to be ideal for you. Because if you're not doing that work, then most likely you're going to be attracting people into your life, and a lot of times your partner who is at that same vibration. And so if you're still in that survival mode, or if you still haven't figured out what it is exactly that you want that has substance, like you said, more than just a honeymoon phase, right? And what I also tell my clients is, how open is that person that you're interested in or that you're in a relationship with? How open is that person to growth and change? Because when a person starts to elevate themselves and they're in a relationship, this is when a lot of couples start to feel either not attracted to each other anymore, or they feel like they don't have anything in common anymore. It really has less to do with the things that they enjoy or like. It has more to do with where they're going on their personal growth journey. So if you're someone that's like elevating yourself constantly, like you said, you found a partner who is also doing the same thing. You don't even have to be doing the same things. It just so happens that you guys are. But as long as you're both open to learning, progressing, because if one person goes and the other person just stays here, that's just creating a big gap that's not going to, it's not going to cause an attraction, or your like attracts like. So opposites can attract, but that's usually just on a surface level. Really, you're going to be meshing with, building a life with someone who is growing with you. So
and I totally agree. And when you use that example that you're constantly trying to improve and someone's comfortable, right? That's exactly what happened in my first marriage. Someone was completely comfortable. There was no need for a second income. There was nothing. Like, it was, every day was like I don't know, a party, or like a college party, right? And it does create that divide. But at the same time, what ends up happening is that when we don't discover ourselves, right? I truly believe in self-awareness and reaching your self-actualized becoming, because when you do that, when you're able to do that, you really want the best of life, because you're doing everything that you can to be the best of you, right? And a lot of times when we are still insecure and we haven't really patched up all the pains and the memories of the past, we only look for those that are less than us, that are in situations less than us, right? And sometimes we misinterpret relationships. When I say relationships, we're talking about business partners, friendships, or like, relationship, not like an intimate relationship. Because sometimes someone may enter your life to be the guiding light, or the hand that pulls you up. And we misinterpret that for an intimate relationship. And then when you no longer need to be lifted up to that level, then all of a sudden the attraction loses. Or if someone thinks, hey, they're only going through a slump, I'm going to help them get over the slump, and they never get out of that slump. It loses that magic. So to some degree, that's where really respecting yourself and appreciating yourself comes in. When you get into an argument, or when there's some misunderstanding, or some bad energy in the air, if you respect yourself enough, you'll know not to engage in that argument at that time, because one, it's going to exhaust you. You're going to drain your energy trying to prove your point, and maybe there's nothing to prove. Maybe it's simply a misunderstanding. A lot of times, we highly exaggerate a small issue, and it could easily be resolved with just, what, take 10 minutes, go wash your face, take a walk, let's come back, let's talk as an adult. Right. And, and it's funny, because when you talk about change, if people are willing to change in a relationship, when you're out there and you're walking on your own, you can go wherever you want. You are the tour guide to your own personal life. But if you have someone with you, you have to, like, are you in the mood for this today? Do you want to go there? Maybe they don't like certain sceneries. And people aren't willing to nudge. Why should I have to change? Why do I have to change? If I have to change who I am in a relationship, you're not accepting me for who I am. And that is so funny, because if your boss called you today to do something, you're going to change for your boss, So chances are you're willing to change for your friends, your buddies. Hey, let's go out. I don't like that shirt. We're going to go to a game, put on a jersey or something. And you're willing to change for people around you. But here you are in a relationship and you're not willing to change for your relationship. And when I say relationship in an intimate way, this is your soulmate. This is your other half, right? This is someone that is sharing your journey with you through life. A lot of times you can have a best friend for 50 years, but that best friend only goes so far. At least, what I mean? Well, maybe not, right? If you're lucky and your best friend is your soulmate, then that's great. But a lot of people will change a lot faster for their jobs or their bosses or employers, right, than they will for their family, and that's where a lot of that disruption really comes from in a relationship.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing all of that. I think this is all very, very valuable. I think a lot of people have either been through these experiences or maybe even experiencing them right now. And one of the things that I say is the purpose of this series, and that I say to my clients, is that getting clarity around your relationship and you as a person, understanding your past patterns, your behaviors, how they've gotten you to where you are, getting clear on your relationships, and not just your romantic ones, but how you interact with people, will catapult you forward in your life.
Yes.
And so I know that happened to you. And so if you want to just tell us a little bit about, like, I know you're very passionate about your career choice right now, and you really like to help people with what you do. And so that all kind of stems through your own realizations and personal growth from your relationship experiences. So you want to share a little bit about what you're working on now?
Yes, so I'm a licensed professional, licensed financial professional, and for me, what I realized was, even growing up, I mean, I witnessed it with my parents, is that most relationships usually reach hardship when it comes to financial matters. Usually it's arguing and bickering about, money for the groceries, the bills, the utilities, not having extra to pay rent or whatever it may be. And we don't realize that. But what ends up happening is that if families had an extra $400 to $500 a month, it would probably save 20% of relationships or marriages from ending in a divorce. And when you think about that, $400 to $500 a month is not a lot of money. It may be if you're not managing your money properly, right? So being a financial educator, we help families understand the importance of, one, prioritizing and budgeting their money. Most people today, before their paychecks even clear in their bank accounts, the status is still pending. They've already spent and exhausted every single penny of that check and probably charged some extra on top of that, right? So we don't have this habit of understanding where our money comes from. And this is where you create that dependent relationship. When one person can't leave, the worst part is that if you have to stay in a relationship because you know that you can't take care of yourself financially on the outside, that leads to a very dangerous lifestyle, a very dangerous situation. And what it does subconsciously is tells you that you can't respect yourself enough to move forward, And for me, I never want to, yeah.
Yeah, no, I can speak to that because as a coach, I hear people's stories and I hear things that they're concerned about or things that are keeping them stuck. And for sure, a place to live is a huge one. If you own a home, where are you going to go? Let's say you don't have family or parents around here, especially if that involves children. So for sure, planning for your finances is important. And if you have that dependence or you're not financially independent, then that is a huge factor in what's going to keep you in there longer. I absolutely agree with that. And not only, keeping you stuck more, but bickering, right? You gave a really great example too, is if you're constantly bickering at home or fighting or stressed out because of money, maybe you'll go somewhere else, meaning another person, like you said, someone's cheating on you because they can find solace in that. They can be stress-free for just a moment. And, we're not condoning that behavior is an okay way to deal with a situation, but this is what people do sometimes. And they're just trying to kind of escape that
Yes.
home stress, when really, if there was more of a plan in place, you could probably eliminate a lot of that extraneous stress and kind of the alluring idea of, oh, who's this other person that doesn't stress me out, right?
Yeah, and that's unfortunately the society we live in, where we look for temporary satisfaction or instant gratification. You know, and again, my wife and I were focused on our financial foundation mainly because we know that if we build it right, we can enjoy retirement at a younger age. We can go and like have those moments together where the children are growing up and everything like that. But when we talk about money in that example, people blame money for everything. They think it's the root of all evil. They think that if you love money, then that is bad. If you're obsessed with money itself, then that is bad. But for me, money is nothing more than a unit of options. You know what I mean? And when you don't have money, you don't have options. So and sometimes, like you described, that option may be, I don't want to go home and deal with another argument. We're behind on bills. We're barely staying afloat, and nobody wants to have that conversation. I was actually in I mentor students, and I actually explained it to them where there was a moment in my life where I felt so guilty, right? So we have a 22-year-old, and when she was getting her college acceptance letters, she didn't apply to UMass Lowell at all. And I was like, hey, you got to go to that school, it's affordable, mainly because it's affordable, but I also graduated from there. But she applied and she got into all of them, right? Wentworth, Merrimack, MIT. She was going for mechanical engineering, and she's, a minor and a female, so it worked out in her favor, where she got approved to all these universities and colleges, and we couldn't afford a single one. The cheapest one that we had to pay out of pocket was $19,000 a semester. You know what I mean? And if you want to talk about having an uncomfortable, we didn't get I felt deep down, I felt guilty, but no parent or no significant other, right? If you're 50-50 in a relationship, you never want to look at someone in the face and say, hey, I can't pull my own weight financially, right? And it makes it very complicating. So a lot of people, yes, do avoid coming home so that they don't have to look their loved ones in the eyes and say, hey, look, I'm not here. So I think money is an important factor. Anyone that says money can't buy happiness, they're absolutely right. I'll totally agree with you that money cannot buy happiness, but it can take care of everything else that you need to take care of so you can enjoy happier moments and create happier memories, right? And
it's kind of like if you can compare it to taking care of your body, right? It's like,
yes.
The more you can stay away from things that are unhealthy for your body, like don't eat processed food, make sure you exercise, do your meditations. Taking care of your physical self is going to decrease your risk. It might happen, but it's going to decrease your risk of getting diseases in the future, dying young, all these things. And so, what I hear you saying is that by eliminating as many of these other stresses as possible, which statistically shows that a lot of, I don't know the exact percent, I should have looked it up beforehand, but a lot of marriages end in divorce because of stress from finances. It makes sense that you would want to minimize as many of those stressors as possible, just by taking the initiative to plan a little bit, right?
Yeah, and it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple, right? It's not easy because a lot of people, the thing I hear the most is, how do I save more if I don't make more? I need to make more in order to have extra to save. And that's totally not true. It doesn't matter how much you make. It's about how you save your money. And then you have to make that money work for you. One concept that I really want people to take away when it comes to the finance side is you have to pay yourself first. And that happens with health too. You have to take care of your health first. We see too many families out there that will exhaust themselves down to the last drop of water, down to the last penny to help everyone else in their community, and they can't help themselves. And if you are that glue to that family, you have to take care of yourself first. You have to be in good health, so that way you can hold everyone else together. And too often we see people like mentally exhausted, emotionally drained, and all it takes is some planning. And when I say it's simple, it means you have to take the initiative to create the good habits to make those changes. It's not easy. You'll have to move things around, but it is simple enough where it all comes down to a decision, right? And too often we blame the action, but we don't look for the root cause. You know, the action, if we go back to the infidelity, the action is that they cheated, but we don't look at the root cause of the problem. It might not that you can justify that or that is a misunderstanding, right? But if we look at what is causing it, maybe we can prevent it from happening again, you know, either in that same relationship or in future relationships.
Right. And I love that you just said that maybe we can prevent it from happening again, because again, the whole point of going through personal growth and development, elevating yourself, right? My goal when I coach with my clients is that going forward, like, yes, we know we have a past, we know we have experiences, right? We had emotional baggage, we've now released that. Well, you have to do more than just let go of your past, than just release your baggage. You also have to create exactly what you want going forward. And so it's just as important to make sure that the decisions, like you said, that you're making are on a new path.
Yes.
And so you create the relationships, the life that you want in every facet, whether it's relationships, finances, you name it.
And I love that because I love all those examples that you shared, mainly because I tell people you have to design your life with intention.
Exactly.
You know, this isn't, your life isn't like PTO time. It's not like vacation hours that you have at work. It's not a use or lose kind of concept. If you don't, our days are use or lose. You know what I mean? If you wake up tomorrow and you don't design it by intention and you just kind of wake up and follow that routine or that zombie mode, you're going to lose that day. You can't say, you know, when I'm 97, I'm going to tack on today because I didn't do anything. So when I'm 97, I'm going to throw it on the back end and have an extra day later on. It doesn't work that way, right? And a lot of people, we wake up and we're just on autopilot the whole time. And that's when these mistakes happen again, because again, you will go back to what you've known, what you've done before, what your habits are. If you don't intentionally change it, you're going to just keep doing the same thing that you've always been doing. And unfortunately, if that's infidelity and that's what you're known for, you have to consciously make that effort to break out of that cycle, right? And again, that's where, you know, for me, having that respect for myself means that I have to stay on top of my own actions. I have to hold myself accountable, right? I got to appreciate myself because, yes, I've gone through some of those challenges, and many people have gone through even harder relationships to move forward from. But what you don't want is be one of those that are habitually falling into these toxic relationships. And sometimes we do that because, one, we don't respect ourselves enough, or two, unfortunately, that's where we find the most comfort, is in those bad relationships, you know what I mean? And that's very dangerous to be in.
Because that's what you're familiar with. It's behavior that you know, as opposed to humans are for some reason petrified of what they don't know. And so even if it's a better choice, they don't know it. They're not familiar with it yet. And so they will still go back to the older patterns. And it's also, you know, a lot of it is like brain patterns, conditioning, and your physiology actually changes with that, but that's like a whole other topic. But I did want to talk, you know, kind of to sum this up, is you did exactly what you're talking about. You used your past situation and you intentionally chose a partner who you knew would be growing with you, be on the same journey with you. And, you know, you weren't going to make that same mistake twice. You weren't going to choose someone who didn't have those career growth journey goals. And so it's all intentional.
It really is. And, you know, and I look at it, I have a very corporate mindset. You know, I've spent many years in operations, and when we look for someone to replace our team, like a team member that's moved up or moved on, we interviewed a lot of people, right? So for me, I always refer back to jobs and stuff like that, is because in my own business, even if I'm looking for business partners, I interview them and I get to know them, you know. And it's funny because the reason why I share this is, how come the most important relationship in our lives, we don't interview people? We take whatever comes our way, or we take the person that is the most extravagant, flamboyant, the person that puts on the best display, right, as if we're peacocks, right? And we don't actually go through the whole let's get to know you kind of process anymore. People meet each other and they date almost instantly. Like they're in a relationship almost like yesterday. And it's kind of like, hey, you know, and that's bad because we've created a culture where, yes, you can just swipe right, swipe left, or whatever, however that all works, right? I was never available for any of that technology coming out. But we don't interview our partners. We simply just pick and choose. We kind of like throw a dart out there and, hey, you're the lucky one. And you know, you can only do that so much before you realize that you've exhausted many years of your life. And having the memories, right? Having the first person you sat down to watch a sunset with on the beach can never be replaced with the fifth person that you sat down to watch the sunset with at the beach. Those memories, you can't recreate those emotions or those feelings. Yet people do it almost all the time, thinking that they'll find a spark. You know what I mean? And it doesn't work that way. But yes, I know this probably went on a lot longer than you expected or anticipated.
No, it was great. You have like so many gems for sure. Value everywhere. I just wanted to also speak to, when you're interviewing people, how many people lie on their resume?
Yes.
And it's just like you were saying, it's when at first, both people are showing up as their best self, their best representatives. And, you can put whatever you want on a resume, just like you can say whatever you want to say on the first few dates or the first month of dating. Right. So it's super important to kind of be a third person observer while you're getting to know someone, before throwing yourself in. Not that you need to be guarded or, like put a wall against your heart or anything, but you need to always keep in the forefront of your mind, what is it that I truly want in a partner and in a relationship? And I need to observe whether this person is that ideal match for me.
Yes. And you bring up a really good point when you talk about falsifying on resumes. And I say this is because we set ourselves up for a failed relationship almost every single time. And what I mean by that is that we create this unrealistic expectation for the other person of who we are, right? We go out there and we will do things that we would never care to do, right?
Right.
You're not going to find me waking up at 4 a.m. to go watch the sunrise. But like in the beginning of the honeymoon, here I am, 3:30, I'm up, let's go, right? And what happens is that you set this expectation of who you're really not, right? And you're misleading them to want someone that you're not really, right? And yes, you could grow into those shoes, but it's easier to find someone who will accept you for who you are. If you are genuine on your first date or your first few months together, and I think you see that when people start getting into their third or fourth marriages, or they're when they're older and they're going into a relationship, they don't have time for that game. They don't have any. Here, this is what I am. Take it or leave it, right?
Right.
But usually those last longer because at least you know exactly with what you're dealing with. Transparency is so important in a relationship. And sometimes if you're transparent enough, the communication doesn't have to be so critical because they know what they're dealing with, So, Emmi, I think this was a great conversation, and thank you so much for your time. For me, it was good to just kind of relive or remind myself that, yes, I do have to constantly improve myself and pay attention, because even for us, we get comfortable in our relationships, right? And my wife will probably be like, yeah, you don't take me on any sunrises. Right? Maybe, all right, maybe we'll go do that, right?
Now you know what's next on the list for you.
That is, I threw myself under the bus on that one.
So I really appreciate, I very much enjoyed our conversation today. I hope that people watching got lots of value as well. If you wouldn't mind, just if people are interested in getting more information about financial education, do you have a place that they can visit you online?
You can find me on Facebook, TUTRI, first name, last name. And then on Instagram is beyondlimits.solution. So Beyond Limits, regular spelling, period, solutions. And that is also my web link, is beyondlimits.solutions.
All right, awesome. Yeah. I think that's a valuable resource for people who might find themselves in maybe a similar situation to yours, or any kind of other financial stress. So Thank you so much for sharing all of your stories today. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
All right.
Hey, welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation and some of it resonated with you. If it did, I have some strategies and advice for you to try if you have any similarities. So the first one has to do with analyzing, or maybe not analyze, but reflecting on the give and take in your relationship. So in two's case, he felt very stuck because he was the sole financial provider. He felt like, he was providing everything, and that if he left, he would have left his wife at the time with absolutely nothing. And so that guilt actually kept him in the relationship longer. So my first advice for you is to check out your relationship or past relationships and see how even it was. Was it a give and take about 50-50? Or were you the one doing all of the providing and the other person really wasn't benefiting you in any way or contributing to the relationship as much as you were? Or are you the other person? Are you the one that is mostly taking and not contributing? Or is it more even Steven? Are you both contributing equally? So that's the first thing that you should be reflecting on. If it's not an even give and take, or if you and your partner don't really have an established expectation of each of your roles in the relationship and who's going to be contributing what, then it might be a conversation that you want to have. If you're not currently in a relationship, then you probably want to journal and reflect about that. In your future relationships, what do you want the relationship to be as far as give and take? And what do you have to offer to the relationship? What will you accept from the other person as contribution, behavior, and what will you do if these things are not met? The second thing is, towards the end of our conversation, we talked about people lying on their resumes and how when you're first dating somebody, even for the first months, even for the first 6 months, a lot of times people show up as their best representatives, and it's not allowing you to truly be 100% yourself right off the bat. What would happen if you could just show up to all of your interviews, right, to your dates, as just 100% yourself? Because think about it. If you actually want to be in a relationship with somebody, don't you want them to accept you for who you are and all of your mannerisms and behaviors? Now, I'm not saying that you can't ever work on yourself and progress and change, but it's going to be a lot harder if you present this certain person and then you turn out to not be that person. It's going to be disappointing for the other one, and it could lead to you kind of going in more separate directions. So I challenge you. You can start this right now. You don't have to be in a relationship with someone or even talking to or dating anybody. You can practice this with all of your relationships. Start showing up as 100% you. You're not caring about what people think about you to a certain extent. I mean, again, we're not being rude or in your face. We're just efficiently communicating who we are and what we stand for and what we like to do, what we don't like to do, and see how people react to that. You want people in your life who accept you and love you unconditionally for who you are. It's not a nice feeling to feel like you have to change for someone in order to be loved or liked. And so that's kind of the first step in giving yourself that elevation of self-respect, is allowing yourself the freedom to be 100% you with the person that you are contemplating being with. So those are 2 tips for you. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comments, and feel free to share and like this video with anyone else you think would benefit. Feel free to subscribe to the channel to get updates on future releases, and I hope to see you in our next episode.